The inspection klaxons of Trade Station Crossroads screamed through every corridor, announcing the quarterly review that would determine every trader's fate for the next cycle. This wasn't just any inspection, this was the one that decided who could trade, what routes they could take, and which exotic goods they were allowed to carry. Administrator Korthax's 6 arms moved in perfect synchronization as he sorted through the morning's paperwork, each appendage handling a different regulatory form. His species, the Thellians, were known for their incredible multitasking abilities and their devotion to order. But all 6 arms froze when he looked up at his office. The study tablets were still warm. The regulation manuals remained unopened. The morning nutrition packets sat untouched. His cubs were gone. Security Protocol 7. His distress call overrode every communication channel on the station, making traders drop their inventory and security officers abandon their posts to respond. In Docking Bay 7, Captain Yuki Tanaka couldn't hear any of the chaos. She had her earbuds in, playing old Earth jazz while she reorganized her cargo hold. The quarterly inspection meant everything had to be perfect, every item cataloged, every exotic good properly documented. She lifted a crate of Centauri spice, setting it beside the crystallized starlight from Vega. Her cargo hold wasn't just storage, it was a museum of wonders from 50 different worlds. Singing crystals from harmony that hummed lullabies in 7 languages. Color-changing fabrics from spectrum that shifted hues based on the wearer's mood. Bottled aurora from frozen worlds that danced in their containers like captured dreams. A soft giggle came from behind her collection of pollution silk. "Damn mice are getting smart," Yuki muttered, adjusting a bolt of Andromedan dream silk that seemed heavier than usual. "Must be building nests in my fabric again." Behind the silk, 8-year-old Zara carefully placed a Vulcan meditation hood over the Klingon warrior helmet she was already wearing. Her younger brother Nix had managed to stack 4 different alien hats on his head and was trying to add a 5th without toppling the whole tower. They discovered Captain Yuki's ship 3 months ago during one of the boring regulatory meetings their father made them attend. While Administrator Korthax discussed import tariffs and docking fees, they'd snuck away to explore the docking bays, following the strange and wonderful smells that didn't exist anywhere else on the station. Before we continue, I should mention that YouTube Analytics shows me that 93% of you wonderful viewers haven't subscribed yet. Subscribing is completely free. It really helps our community grow, and I'd love for you to be part of our storytelling family. Also, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I love hearing from viewers across the galaxy, especially those of you watching from trade stations. Security Chief Braxton's voice crackled through the station-wide comm system. "All teams report. We're looking for 2 Thellian cubs approximately 8 years old. Administrator's children. Priority 1. Command deck clear. Residential sectors negative. Commercial district shows no sign of them." "What about the docking bays?" someone suggested. Braxton checked his scanner. "All ships are locked down during inspection. Security seals are intact. Besides, the Administrator's cubs are terrified of the docking areas ever since that lecture about dangerous traders." "Bay 7 is showing some activity," another officer reported. "That's just Captain Tanaka reorganizing her cargo. She has special permission to work during inspections. She supplies exotic goods for the VIP reception tonight. Move on to the next sector." Yuki pulled out another crate, this one filled with puzzle boxes from 12 different systems. She'd been collecting them for years, each one requiring a different type of thinking to solve. Some needed mathematics, others music, and her favorite required you to tell it a joke before it would open. "This one," she said to herself, practicing her market pitch, "comes from the merchant who traded songs for silk. He said his grandmother designed it, and the only way to open it is to hum the lullaby she sang to him as a child." 2 small oohs came from behind the crates. Yuki paused, her head tilting. That didn't sound like mice. She moved quietly around the boxes, her trader instincts kicking in. In her line of work, you learn to be careful about unexpected sounds in your cargo hold. What she found made her freeze completely. 2 Thellian cubs sat surrounded by her collection of alien hats, wearing at least 17 different pieces of cultural headwear between them. They had her travel journal open, The one where she drew pictures in the margins and wrote stories about every trade she'd ever made. Nix was juggling 3 Betazoid emotion stones while Zara had successfully solved 2 of the puzzle boxes that most adults couldn't figure out. Nix looked up, his 4 eyes widening with excitement rather than fear. "Are you the story lady?" Yuki's merchant training kicked in, when faced with the unexpected, assessed "Don't panic. These weren't thieves or stowaways. These were Administrator Korthax's missing cubs, the ones that had the entire station in security lockdown. And they were calling her the story lady. You're the one from the market," Zara added, her voice bright with recognition. "You tell stories with everything you sell." Now Yuki remembered. Every week at the station market she'd set up her stall and sell her exotic goods. But she never just sold things, she told the story of each item. Where it came from, who made it, what adventure brought it to her ship. She'd noticed the 2 Thellian cubs hanging around the edges of the crowd, always listening but never buying. "You've been coming to my ship," Yuki said, not a question but an understanding. "For 3 months, Nix admitted proudly. During Father's boring meetings. You never lock your cargo hold properly." "The lock's been broken for 6 months, Yuki admitted. "Haven't had time to fix it. But why come here?" Zara held up the journal, pointing to a drawing of a nebula with notes about a trade deal written around it. "Father only tells regulation stories. Rules and permits and proper procedures. Your stories have adventures. Look what we found." Nix showed her their discoveries. They'd organized her entire hat collection, but not by species or value. They'd arranged them by the stories she'd told about each one. This one from the laughing merchant who paid you in jokes. This one from the singing stones deal where you had to learn an entire opera. This one from the time you accidentally married a prince. That marriage was annulled, Yuki said automatically, then realized these cubs had memorized every story she'd ever told at the market. The security scanner sweep was getting closer. She could hear boots in the corridor outside the docking bay. "Your father must be terrified," Yuki said. "Father's always terrified," Zara said sadly. "Terrified we'll break rules. Terrified we'll fail inspection. Terrified we'll become like." She trailed off. "Like traders," Nix finished. "Wanderers. Storytellers. Free." Yuki made a decision that would change everything. She activated her cargo hold's quarantine protocol, a legal inspection delay that gave her 3 hours to investigate potential contamination. Quarantine activated. Potential biological hazard. Investigation in progress. The security sweep acknowledged the quarantine and moved to the next bay. It was completely legal and it bought her time. "You're going to be in so much trouble," Zara whispered. "Sometimes trouble is worth it for a good story," Yuki said. "Want to hear about these?" She gestured to a new shipment she hadn't unpacked yet. Their eyes lit up like binary stars. Yuki opened the first crate, pulling out what looked like ordinary snow globes. But when she shook one instead of snow, it showed the storm patterns of Jupiter. Another showed the rings of Saturn spinning in real time. A third contained a miniature aurora borealis. "These come from an artist on Titan who captures moments from across the solar system. She trades them only for Earth memories. I gave her the memory of my grandmother's garden in Kyoto, and she gave me these." The cubs were mesmerized, but Nix asked the important question. "How do you trade a memory?" "Carefully," Yuki said, pulling out a small device. "And with permission. She doesn't take the memory from you, she copies the feeling of it. The smell of the cherry blossoms, the sound of water in the fountain, the feeling of sun through leaves. Then she puts those sensations into her art." "Father would say that's not proper commerce," Zara said quietly. "Your father would be wrong," came a deep voice from the cargo hold entrance. Administrator Korthax stood there, all 6 arms in what Yuki recognized as a defensive posture. His chromatophores, the color-changing cells that showed Thellian emotions, were flashing through purple, distress, red, anger, and yellow, fear. "Captain Tanaka, I'm overriding your quarantine." The cubs immediately stood up, still wearing their collection of hats, looking like the universe's most multicultural costume party. "Father, we can explain." Zara started. "You abandoned your studies. You violated security protocols. You invaded a trader's ship. You." Korthax stopped, his main eyes focusing on what Nix was holding. "Is that a Thellian memory sphere?" Yuki looked at the object in Nix's hands. She'd bought it years ago, never knowing exactly what it was, only that the seller had said it was full of administrative memories, and had laughed when selling it to her for almost nothing. Nix held it up. "It shows someone collecting shells on a beach." The seller said it was worthless because it was just some administrator's childhood. All 6 of Korthax's arms dropped to his sides. His chromatophores shifted to deep blue, a color Yuki had never seen on a Thellian before. "That's mine," he whispered. "From before the regulations." "You were a collector?" Yuki asked gently. "Shells from 14 different worlds. My parents thought it was frivolous. When I became administrator, I sold them all to a trader for practically nothing. Said I needed to focus on regulations, not wonder." The cubs stared at their father like they'd never seen him before. "You used to collect things?" Zara asked. "Like Captain Yuki?" "I used to dream of the stars," Korthax said, his voice hollow. "Then I learned to count them instead." Yuki picked up the memory sphere, holding it out to him. "The memory's still here. You can have it back." "Memories can't be regulated," Korthax said, but he took the sphere with trembling hands. When he touched it, his chromatophores shifted to a warm gold, the color of wonder. "Father?" Nix said nervously. "Are we in trouble?" Korthax looked at his cubs, really looked at them. They were happy. They were learning. They were excited about something for the first time in months. And they were wearing an absolutely ridiculous number of hats. "The inspectors will be here in 30 minutes, he said. "We'll leave," Zara said quickly, starting to remove the hats. "No." Korthax picked up one of the fallen hats, a traditional Earth sombrero, and placed it on his own head. "Captain Tanaka, I need you to tell me the story of this one. Quickly." Yuki blinked in surprise. "That one?" "A mariachi player in Mexico City traded it for a bottle of Centauri brandy. He said the hat had played at 1,000 weddings and wanted to travel to the stars for its retirement." "The hat wanted to travel?" Korthax asked. "Everything wants to travel," Nix said wisely. "Even administrators." "Especially administrators," Korthax corrected, his chromatophores shifting through a rainbow of colors. "Captain Tanaka, I'm going to propose something unprecedented. I want you to become the station's first cultural education trader." "Is that even a real position?" Yuki asked. "It will be in about 20 minutes, Korthax said. "My cubs have been sneaking onto your ship for 3 months. In that time, their test scores have improved by 60%. They've learned more about mathematics from your trade stories than from any textbook. They understand cultural dynamics better than most diplomats." "Father, are you feeling all right?" Zara asked, concerned. "I'm feeling like an administrator who just remembered he used to be a dreamer," Korthax said. "The inspectors want to see innovation in education. Well, what's more innovative than teaching through stories?" The next 20 minutes were a whirlwind of preparation. Yuki and the cubs organized her cargo hold into an educational display. Each section demonstrated different learning principles: mathematics through trade routes, science through exotic materials, history through the stories of objects, culture through the hat collection. When the inspectors arrived, they found something unprecedented. Administrator Korthax, known for his strict adherence to rules, wearing a sombrero and helping his cubs present their learning portfolios. "This is highly irregular," Inspector Vex said, her 3 eyes narrowing as she examined the display. "So is inspiration," Yuki replied calmly. Nix stepped forward, juggling the emotion stones while calculating their trajectory. "These stones from Bataste follow a mathematical pattern based on emotional frequencies. The frequency of joy creates a parabolic arc, while sadness follows a sine wave. I can demonstrate the equations." Zara presented her work next. "I've mapped 17 trade routes using stories Captain Yuki told about her journeys. Each story contains navigational data, economic indicators, and cultural exchange points. It's more comprehensive than standard star charts because it includes the human element, why traders choose certain routes over others." Inspector Vex turned to her colleague, Inspector Hadley, who had been unusually quiet. The older woman was staring at a small notebook Yuki had on display. "Where did you get this?" Hadley asked. "A trader on Proxima gave it to me. Said it was her grandfather's journal from when he ran cargo between Earth and Mars. She wanted it to keep traveling." Hadley opened the notebook with shaking hands. "This is my grandfather's. He taught me to count using cargo manifests, to read using his adventure logs. I became an inspector because of the stories he told about keeping trade routes safe. We learn better with stories, the cubs said in unison. Everyone does, Hadley said softly. Inspector Vex, I'm granting provisional approval for this program. 1-year trial. Captain Tanaka will be appointed as cultural education trader. The cubs will serve as student ambassadors. And I want quarterly reports on the educational outcomes. But the regulations Vex started. Will be updated to include innovative education methods, Hadley finished. Sometimes regulations need to remember they serve people, not the other way around. Word of the program spread quickly through the station. Other traders began arriving at the cargo hold, curious about this new position. Captain Morocco brought his collection of spices, each with a story about the culture that created it. Trader Shi arrived with musical instruments from across the galaxy, explaining how music was the first universal language. Merchant Quinn came with broken technology and tales of innovation born from necessity. We've all been teachers, Quinn said. Kids always gather when we tell our stories at market. Then let's make it official, Korthax said. Form a coalition. Each trader can offer a different type of education through their speciality. Within an hour they had a curriculum. Within 2 hours they had 40 students signed up. Within 3 hours, Trade Station Crossroads had become the first station to offer story-based education. 3 months later the program was tested in ways no one expected. The emergency meeting was called at 0600, before most of the station was awake. The Crimson Void pirates had blockaded the main trade route. No ships in or out. The station's economy would collapse within weeks. Military intervention would cost more than we have, the security chief reported. Diplomatic channels have failed, the communications officer added. The pirates won't negotiate, Korthax said, his chromatophores dark with worry. What would the merchant of Venice do? Nix asked suddenly. Everyone turned to look at the young Thellian, who was wearing his student ambassador badge. It's one of Captain Yuki's stories, he explained. About a merchant who turned enemies into allies through creative bargaining. Pirates don't bargain, the security chief said. Everyone bargains, Zara corrected. They just need to want what you're offering. And what could we possibly offer pirates? Korthax asked. Stories, the cubs said together. The room fell silent. Yuki stood up. The cubs might be right. Pirates aren't just thieves, they're isolated. They spend months in deep space with no entertainment, no culture, no connection. What if we offered them something money can't buy? You want to trade stories to pirates? Inspector Vex asked, incredulous. Not trade, Nix said, his tactical mind working. Subscribe. Make them regular customers. They get exclusive access to our story station, regular entertainment, cultural exchange, connection to the wider galaxy. In exchange, they protect the trade route. Because it's their trade route now too, Zara added. They're invested in keeping it safe. The adults exchanged glances. It was insane. It was unprecedented. It was exactly the kind of creative thinking the story program had been teaching. Do it, Korthax said. The cubs organized the station's children into the Junior Traders Initiative. Each child contributed stories from their family's culture. They created a catalog not of goods but of tales, adventure stories, love stories, mysteries, comedies. They packaged them like precious cargo because to the isolated pirates, that's exactly what they were. The video call with the Crimson Void captain was tense. Captain Scarlet was everything you'd expect from a pirate leader, scarred, dangerous, with eyes that had seen too much violence. But when the cubs presented their offer, professionally and without fear, something in those hard eyes shifted. You want to give us stories? Scarlet asked. Not give, Zara corrected. Share. You become part of our story station network. Every week new tales. Music from Trader Shi. Recipes from Captain Morocco. Adventures from Captain Yuki. All we ask is safe passage for ships carrying story traders. The pirate captain was silent for a long moment. Then, tell me one story. If it's good enough, we'll consider it. Yuki stepped forward. She told the tale of the lonely star sailor, who traveled so far from home that he forgot the taste of rain and the sound of laughter. How he found both again in the most unexpected place, in the kindness of strangers who shared their stories with him. When she finished, Captain Scarlet's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Deal," the pirate said roughly. "We'll protect the story station route. But I want first access to all new stories." "Agreed," Korthax said, his chromatophores shifting to satisfaction. "Welcome to our subscriber base." 6 months later, Trade Station Crossroads hosted its first story festival. The transformation was complete. What had been a standard trade station focused solely on commerce and regulations had become a hub of cultural exchange. The main promenade, once filled only with standard vendor stalls, now featured story circles where traders and visitors gathered to share tales. The Cubs ran the opening ceremony, wearing their official story trade ambassador badges. They'd grown in the past months, not just physically but in confidence and purpose. "Stories multiply when shared, unlike cargo," Zara announced to the gathered crowd. "When I give you a crate, I lose it. When I give you a story, we both have it. And sometimes," Nix added, "the story grows in the telling." The festival featured booths from every trader on the station. Captain Morocco didn't just sell spices, he told the tales of the cultures that created them. Trader Shi's musical performances came with histories of the instruments and the peoples who played them. Merchant Quinn's broken technology became lessons in innovation and adaptation. But the biggest surprise was the booth run by the Crimson Void Pirates. Captain Scarlet had come in person, bringing 3 of her crew. They weren't selling anything. Instead, they were sharing their own stories, tales of isolation in deep space, of why they'd turned to piracy, of how the story station had given them something they'd never expected: belonging. "We were rich in goods but poor in soul," Scarlet told a gathering crowd. "The stories reminded us that wealth means nothing if you have no one to share it with." Administrator Korthax stood at the story festival, wearing not 1 but 3 different cultural hats, his chromatophores shifting through every color of satisfaction. He watched his cubs teaching younger children how to catalog stories, how to find the lesson in every tale, how to build bridges with words instead of walls with regulations. "You've changed everything," he said to Yuki, who stood beside him drinking earth tea from a Martian cup while wearing a Vulcan ceremonial robe. "The Cubs changed everything," Yuki corrected. "I just had a broken lock on my cargo hold." The Wandering Star Academy, as Yuki's expanded cargo hold was now officially called, had become the prototype for education reform across the trade routes. Her curriculum was being adapted by 17 different stations. The Tanaka method was being studied by education ministers from Earth to Andromeda. The cargo hold itself had been transformed. Different sections for different types of learning: the navigation corner where star charts mixed with Norse myths, the mathematics market where trade calculations met Mongolian numerology, the science sanctuary where Aboriginal Dreamtime explained quantum mechanics. "Captain Yuki," a young voice called out. She turned to see a tiny Altarian chick, barely old enough to be away from the nest. "Yes, little one? Will you tell us the story of how stories saved the station?" Yuki smiled, gathering the children around her. The cubs immediately sat down to help, even though they'd heard this story 100 times. "Once," Yuki began, "there was a station that ran on rules and regulations. Everything had its place, every place had its rule. But 2 young cubs knew a secret: that wonder was hiding in the most unexpected place." As she told the story, more listeners gathered. Traders, administrators, pirates, children, all sitting together in the cargo hold that had become a classroom, a sanctuary, a bridge between worlds. That evening, as the artificial stars came on in the observation deck, the entire station gathered for the closing ceremony. It was a tradition the Cubs had started, a story circle where everyone added 1 line to create a collective tale. "Once there was a station that forgot how to dream," Zara began. "The dreams were locked away in regulation manuals," Nix continued. "Until 2 cubs found a broken lock," Korthax added, smiling at his children. "And discovered a cargo hold full of wonder," Yuki contributed. "Where hats were histories," said Captain Morocco. "And spices were stories," added Trader Shi. "Where pirates found their hearts," Captain Scarlet said gruffly. And administrators found their souls, Inspector Hadley added. Around and around the circle the story went, each person adding their line, weaving a tale that was part myth, part history, all truth. The story of how Trade Station Crossroads became Story Station, how commerce learned to dance with culture, how regulations made room for wonder. When the circle was complete, Korthax stood. I have an announcement. The Trade Council has approved a new classification of commerce. Story trading is now an official category. Stories can be bartered, bought, sold, and traded just like any other good. Captain Tanaka's cubs, our cubs, will receive the first junior licenses. The cheer that went up could probably be heard 3 systems away. Zara and Nix stood proudly as Yuki pinned the official story trader badges to their clothes. They were the youngest licensed traders in the galaxy's history. What will you trade first? Someone called out. The cubs looked at each other, then at Yuki, then at their father. We want to trade the story of the lonely administrator who collected shells, Zara said. For what? Korthax asked, his chromatophores shifting to curious. For the story of the woman who traded memories for snow globes, Nix said. Because every ending needs a beginning. The crowd dispersed slowly, reluctant to let the magic of the evening fade. But in the cargo hold, now quiet except for the hum of the air recyclers, 4 figures remained. Yuki was cataloging the new stories she'd collected during the festival. The cubs were helping, though they barely fit in their favorite hiding spots anymore. Korthax was there too, having discovered that cataloging stories was remarkably similar to his administrative work, just infinitely more satisfying. Captain Yuki, Zara asked, using the formal title she'd adopted for her teacher, do you think other stations will really change? Will stories spread everywhere? Stories have been spreading since the first human looked at the stars and wondered what they were, Yuki said. We just gave them official paperwork. A message came through on her communication panel. It was from Earth. UNESCO wanted to study their program. Another from Mars, they wanted to establish a story trade route. A third from the Crimson Void, they'd found an ancient Earth book of fairy tales in a derelict ship and wanted to know its trade value. Every message is a new adventure, Nix said excitedly. Every adventure is a new story, Zara added. And every story, Korthax said, placing a gentle hand on each of his cubs' heads, is a bridge to understanding. Yuki opened one final crate, one she'd been saving. Inside were 4 graduation caps, the traditional Earth symbols of educational achievement. But these were special, each one was decorated with elements from different cultures they'd studied, stories they'd shared, adventures they'd lived. These are for my first graduates, she said. And my co-teachers. They put on the caps, the Thellian administrator, his 2 cubs, and the human trader who'd started it all with a broken lock and a cargo hold full of wonders. Outside the viewport, the stars continued their ancient dance, indifferent to the small revolution happening on one trade station. But on that station, in that cargo hold, 4 souls had proven that sometimes the most valuable cargo isn't something you can hold in your hands, it's the stories that transform strangers into family and regulations into adventures. The next morning brought new challenges. A message from a struggling station asking for help implementing their own story program. A request from the pirates for something with dragons. A formal inquiry from the Galactic Trade Commission about establishing story trading posts along all major routes. We're going to need a bigger cargo hold, Yuki said, looking at all the requests. Or more story traders, Zara suggested. Why not both? Nix asked. Why not indeed, Korthax agreed, his chromatophores glowing with possibility. They set to work, the administrator who'd learned to dream again, the cubs who'd taught a station to wonder, and the trader who'd discovered that the best trades were the ones that enriched souls rather than accounts. In the official trade registry, the incident would be recorded simply, 2 administrator cubs discovered in trader's cargo hold during quarterly inspection. No regulations violated due to creation of new cultural education provision. But in the story registry, the new database the cubs had created, it was recorded differently. The day 2 cubs were found in a human trader's cargo hold would be remembered as the moment commerce learned its most valuable currency. Stories that transformed stations into homes and strangers into family. The revolution hadn't been planned or publicized. It had started with 2 children who wanted more than regulations, a trader who couldn't fix a broken lock, and a cargo hold full of wonders waiting to be discovered. Years from now, when Zara and Nix ran their own trading ships, they would be known across the galaxy as the Storyteller Twins. Every port they visited would transform, every trade they made would include tales, Every cargo hold they owned would have a special section for children to discover wonder. But that was the future. For now, in the present, they sat in Yuki's cargo hold, surrounded by treasures from across the galaxy, wearing their graduation caps and planning their next adventure. "Captain Yuki?" Nix asked. "What's the most valuable story you know?" Yuki thought for a moment, then smiled. "The one we're living right now. The story of how two cubs hiding in a cargo hold changed the galaxy's understanding of value." "That's not a story," Zara said. "That's just what happened." "The best stories always are," Yuki replied. "Just what happened, told in a way that helps others see the magic in their own happenings." Outside, the station buzzed with its usual activity: ships docking, trades being made, regulations being filed. But now there was something else too. In corners and corridors, in cargo holds and cafeterias, people were sharing stories. The currency of connection, the trade of understanding, the commerce of souls. The Crimson Void pirates had established a permanent embassy on the station, their representative always available to trade stories for safe passage. Other pirate groups were inquiring about similar arrangements. Inspector Hadley had returned with a promotion and a mandate to spread story-based education throughout her sector. Captain Morocco had started a cooking school where recipes came with their histories. Trader Shi's Music Academy taught instruments alongside the stories of the cultures that created them. And at the center of it all, the Wandering Star Academy continued to grow. The broken lock had finally been fixed, but Yuki had installed a special door, one that opened for anyone who spoke the password, "I have a story to trade." The transformation was complete, but the journey was just beginning. Every ship that left Trade Station Crossroads carried more than goods now, it carried stories. And those stories would dock at other stations, be told in other markets, inspire other cubs to seek wonder in unexpected places. In her captain's log, Yuki wrote, "Discovered today that the most valuable cargo doesn't take up any space in the hold but fills every heart that carries it. Two cubs taught me that regulations are just stories we tell ourselves about how things must be. Change the story, change the universe." Korthax, reading over her shoulder, added his own note. Administrative addendum. Wonder is now classified as an essential service. Story trading approved for all sectors. Dream requisition forms available upon request. The cubs, squeezed together in their favorite hiding spot, though they barely fit anymore, added their own conclusion: adventure status, ongoing. Cargo status, infinite. Story status, just beginning. And in the cargo hold of the Wandering Star, surrounded by treasures from across the galaxy, four friends continued their work of transforming the universe one story at a time. Because they'd learned the greatest secret of all, that the most precious cargo was the one that multiplied when shared, grew richer when given away, and transformed everyone who carried it. The story of the cubs in the cargo hold would be told for generations, each telling adding new details, new perspectives, new wonder. But at its heart, it would always be the same simple truth, that two children seeking adventure and a trader with a broken lock had proven that sometimes the most valuable discoveries are the ones hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to look beyond the regulations and find the wonder.